California phones were lighting up Iran's war room, and American intelligence didn't notice until it was too late. The Speaker of Iran's parliament just posted something on social media that made Washington freeze. Not propaganda, not mistranslated rage, perfect American English. A Google Maps screenshot showing gas stations near the White House. Prices at $4 and change per gallon. His caption read like it came from a political consultant in Los Angeles, not a government official in Tehran. Someone inside the United States was running Iran's information campaign, and they were better at targeting American anxieties than most presidential campaigns. Researchers traced the account. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf's verified profile, the man who just walked out of failed peace talks in Islamabad, was being operated from California. Every tweet aimed at American audiences. Every carefully chosen phrase designed to hit specific cultural pressure points. Iran wasn't just fighting a military conflict. They'd hired someone who understood how Americans think, what makes them angry, what keeps them scrolling. That level of sophistication tells you how seriously Tehran takes the information dimension of this war. But what happened next made Ghalibaf's social media strategy look like a warm-up act. Donald Trump announced a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Except there was one problem that confused every analyst who read the statement. Iran had already been blocking Hormuz for weeks. CNN ran a headline that basically asked the question everyone was thinking. How do you blockade something that's already blockaded? The Financial Times was more diplomatic but reached the same confused conclusion. This wasn't a straightforward military escalation. Something stranger was happening. Before the war, roughly 145 ships transited Hormuz daily, carrying about 20% of the world's oil supply. That number collapsed to single digits after Iran mined the waterway and started controlling who could pass. So, when Trump said America would close Hormuz, the immediate question became close it from whom? The world was already locked out. The Wall Street Journal got the clearest explanation. American warships wouldn't actually position inside the strait. They'd form a perimeter outside, stopping and searching any vessel that had paid Iran for passage. That distinction matters because it reveals what this operation actually targets. Not the physical waterway, Iran's new revenue stream. While diplomats were talking peace in Islamabad, Iran was quietly building something that changed its entire economic position. According to Argus Media and multiple regional outlets, Iran had been charging up to $2 million per tanker to transit the strait. Not through official channels. Through a system where desperate vessel operators, mostly from China, India, and Japan, would make contact, arrange cryptocurrency payment, and receive clearance to pass through a narrow corridor between two Iranian-controlled islands. Do the math. At roughly 20 million barrels moving through Hormuz on a normal pre-war day and $2 million per tanker, analysts estimated Iran was pulling in somewhere between 20 million and 600 million per month just from transit fees. That's before counting their own oil exports. In March 2026, Iran managed to export approximately 1.85 million barrels per day through its controlled corridor, higher than pre-war levels. The country America was trying to economically strangle was actually profiting more from the war than it had from peace. There's a detail buried in CNN's reporting that makes this even more remarkable. The United States had removed sanctions on Iranian oil during this period. Iranian crude was selling at official market prices, not smuggled, not laundered through shell companies, openly traded on international markets by anyone willing to buy it. Oil that was technically sanctioned before the war was now flowing freely because American policy had quietly reversed itself. So Trump's blockade announcement wasn't about cutting off Iranian oil, it was about cutting off the toll booth, the $2 million per crossing fee that had turned Hormuz from a strategic choke point into a profit center. Iran's response wasn't panic. It was something closer to satisfaction. Because while Trump was announcing his blockade, America's oldest military ally was publicly saying no. Britain refused to participate. Keir Starmer confirmed the Royal Navy would not contribute vessels to the operation, not quietly through diplomatic channels, publicly. The British government issued a statement emphasizing that Hormuz should not be subject to transit fees, which was notably aimed at Iran rather than an endorsement of America's approach. Britain's refusal matters militarily because the Royal Navy has significant Gulf presence and mine countermeasure capability that the operation now loses. But politically, it matters even more. This isn't a small nation declining. This is the country that joined every major U.S. military operation since 2001, publicly stepping back. France took a different approach. Paris started studying whether to assemble its own coalition, not under American command, but as a parallel operation to protect European energy shipments, not joining Trump's blockade, building an independent military presence in the same waterway. That's not alliance coordination, that's alliance fragmentation. Different countries pursuing different objectives in the same location simultaneously, and the operational risks of that situation are significant. Iran watched NATO's unity quietly crack, and then prepared a countermove designed to make every European calculation irrelevant overnight. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a formal statement warning that if the United States proceeds with closing Hormuz, Iran will close Bab al-Mandeb through its Houthi allies in Yemen. For anyone unfamiliar with what that means, Bab al-Mandeb is the narrow strait at the southern end of the Red Sea connecting it to the Gulf of Aden. Every ship traveling between Asia and Europe through the Suez Canal must pass through it. Before the Houthi campaign started in 2023, approximately 15% of global maritime trade used this route. If Bab al-Mandeb closes while Hormuz is already restricted, the implications cascade in ways that reshape the entire regional calculation. Egypt's Suez Canal revenues have already dropped 37% because of rerouted shipping. A formal closure of Bab al-Mandeb doesn't just reduce traffic, it eliminates it completely. The country's primary foreign currency earner collapses overnight. Egypt, already facing severe economic pressure, loses the one revenue stream keeping its financial system functional. Saudi Arabia faces an equally devastating problem. The kingdom's primary oil export route that bypasses Hormuz runs through the east-west pipeline to the port of Yanbu on the Red Sea coast. If the Red Sea becomes inaccessible because Bab al-Mandeb is closed and Houthi missiles make transit too dangerous, Yanbu becomes useless. Saudi Arabia loses both its Hormuz route and its Hormuz bypass simultaneously. The IRGC's threat wasn't random. It was surgical, aimed precisely at making the Gulf states understand what supporting America's blockade would cost them. The message landed quickly. 2 U.S. destroyers entered Hormuz, and according to IRGC video footage, were warned to leave immediately or face fire. The destroyers departed. The Navy's statement was carefully worded. It said the ships were operating under international law and weren't challenging Iran. The IRGC framed it differently. They claimed the ships retreated under threat. Both statements can't be simultaneously accurate, but only one version got broadcast across Middle Eastern media. While that was happening, a number appeared that should fundamentally alter how anyone thinks about this conflict's trajectory. $13. That's the price per barrel of Brent crude after Trump's blockade announcement. Before this war started, oil traded in the mid-70s. The conflict pushed it past 85 within days. Iran's mining operations pushed it past 90. Brief ceasefire hope pulled it back toward 95. The collapse of Islamabad talks pushed it past 100. Trump's blockade guarantee of extended disruption pushed it to 103 and climbing. Kalibaf's tweet about $4 and $5 gas wasn't trolling. It was arithmetic. At 103 per barrel, American gasoline prices are heading toward levels not seen since the worst inflationary periods in recent memory, and they're arriving at the worst possible political moment. Because reporters caught Trump on the tarmac returning from vacation and asked directly whether he thought oil prices would drop before midterm elections. His answer was no. He said it plainly, acknowledged it without hedging. A president publicly stating he doesn't expect the primary economic pain point to improve before voters head to polls is genuinely extraordinary. That's not normal political messaging. It's the kind of admission that creates immediate pressure from within his own party. CBS polling found that while 85% of Republicans still supported Trump's Iran actions, that number had been eroding as economic consequences became tangible. The midterm timeline isn't background context. According to Wall Street Journal analysis, it's central to understanding every decision Washington makes right now. A president who can't demonstrate progress before November has limited runway, and Iran's negotiators understand that calendar as intimately as any Republican senator. The Wall Street Journal published an assessment this week with unusual directness. Its thesis: any outcome that doesn't reopen Hormuz isn't victory for the United States. Getting there from the current position requires choosing between options ranging from difficult to catastrophic. Option 1 is ground invasion of Iranian coastal territory. The logic is straightforward. Physically occupy the coastline commanding the strait's northern shipping lane, and you deny Iran the ability to mine it, fire from it, or use it for toll enforcement. The problem is everything after occupation. You capture that ground, and you own it. Garrison it, defend it, supply it, hold it against an IRGC that spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. American casualties wouldn't be abstract. They'd lead the news daily, and political sustainability of holding Iranian territory through midterms, through extended occupation, through years of irregular warfare, is essentially zero. Option 2 uses the ceasefire window to continue force buildup while keeping diplomacy technically open. Military cargo flights from Europe haven't stopped. New ground elements keep arriving. Air defense stockpiles are being replenished. Trump isn't bluffing about preparation. The logistics prove something larger is planned. But Iran is doing identical preparation. The IRGC is repositioning air defense systems toward the Gulf Coast. Underground tunnel networks are being re-excavated. Both sides emerge from ceasefire stronger than at Islamabad, which doesn't make the next negotiation easier. It makes it harder. Option 3 resumes air campaigns against Iranian infrastructure with scope and intensity exceeding the first 12 days. Financial Times analysts noted this directly, but raised immediate counter-argument. Iran shares borders with 15 countries. A nation with 15 land borders can't be economically isolated through sea power alone. Iran imports components, fuel, food, weapons overland from Russia through the Caucasus, from Central Asia, from Iraq, from Turkey. The blockade constrains oil export revenues. It doesn't sever Iran from the world. None of these three options produces quick outcomes. That's the conclusion Wall Street Journal analysis pointed toward, and it's the conclusion Calabaf's California-drafted tweets are designed to amplify for American audiences paying $5 per gallon while watching retirement accounts respond to $103 oil. Some voices within Trump's administration reportedly suggested the Iran situation could resolve similarly to Venezuela. The logic goes, America maintained sustained naval and economic pressure on Venezuela, applied maximum force over extended periods, eventually found factions within Venezuelan government willing to remove Nicolas Maduro in exchange for relief. The operation succeeded. Maduro was removed, transitional government installed, blockade ended. The case for applying this model starts with identical structure: sustained pressure, economic pain, internal fracture, leadership change. Here's where it collapses entirely. Venezuela's military and political class, while loyal to Maduro superficially, contained factions motivated primarily by personal financial interest. When calculations changed, when economic damage became sufficiently personal, and Washington's offer became concrete enough, those factions moved. The system was transactional at core. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps operates on fundamentally different motivations. According to Financial Times analysts, the IRGC's institutional identity is built around religious war, conflict with theological meaning transcending personal material interest. Soldiers and commanders who believe they're fighting divinely mandated battles don't defect because oil prices climbed or savings lost value. Ideological binding within the IRGC isn't comparable to self-interested loyalty surrounding Maduro. There's a second structural difference. Venezuela had single identifiable figure whose removal could theoretically resolve crisis. Iran's power structure distributes across Supreme Leader's office, IRGC leadership parliament, clerical establishment in Hume. Removing any one person doesn't collapse the system. It creates succession contests producing someone equally committed to identical positions. Current situation with wounded, invisible Supreme Leader already demonstrates this. The Venezuela option isn't available. Recognizing its unavailability forces honest confrontation with what remaining options actually offer. Here's where things actually stand as this week begins. Iran collects $2 million per tanker from ships desperate to transit a strait it already controlled. Its March oil exports exceeded pre-war levels. Its lead negotiator gets scripted from California, and its parliament speaker posts screenshots of White House gas prices, reminding American voters what's approaching. America announced blockading something already blockaded, operates without British support, watches France pursue independent naval strategy, has a president who publicly acknowledged gas prices won't drop before elections that could cost his party Congress. Oil sits at 103 and climbing. Saudi Arabia's pipeline is down. Egypt's Suez revenues hit 63% of normal. Europe counts jet fuel in weeks. Japan, South Korea, Philippines quietly call Moscow about alternative energy supplies. The 2-week ceasefire is a countdown clock. Both sides use it for rearming. Neither uses it for negotiating. What makes this moment genuinely different from any previous point is convergence of pressures. Military pressure builds on both sides. Economic pressure builds on everyone. Political pressure builds in Washington with hard deadlines in November. And the gap between what America needs from deals, Hormuz open, uranium removed, versus what Iran accepts, sovereignty over straits, enrichment rights preserved, hasn't closed by single millimeters since Vance landed in Islamabad. The blockade isn't solution, it's pressure escalation in situations where both sides already operate under more pressure than either publicly admitted. People paying sharpest prices aren't in Washington or Tehran. They're at gas stations in Ohio, airport fuel depots at Heathrow, refineries in South Korea, at Yanbu Port watching tankers sit idle in Red Sea. The ceasefire clock is ticking. When it expires, nothing about what follows will be slow or predictable. Iran proved it can generate revenue from chaos. America proved it can't easily reverse that dynamic through force alone. Europe proved it will pursue its own interests when Washington's strategy diverges from continental survival. And the global energy market proved it responds to fear faster than it responds to diplomacy. 2 weeks isn't enough time to rebuild trust that never existed. It's barely enough time to reload weapon systems and reposition forces for whatever comes after talking stops and the shooting resumes. Both capitals are making calculations right now. Iran calculates whether toll revenue plus ideological victory outweighs economic damage. Washington calculates whether midterm losses outweigh strategic gains from extended confrontation. The arithmetic on both sides is brutal, and somewhere in California, someone is already drafting Calabaf's next tweet, choosing exactly which American pain point to highlight next, and exactly which American idiom will sting hardest. What nobody's saying publicly is that both sides might prefer this stalemate to resolution. Iran's making more money than it did during peacetime. Washington's military-industrial complex is running at capacity. Europe's being forced to choose between American alliance and economic survival. And the longer this continues, the more normalized $100 oil becomes. The real question isn't whether the ceasefire holds. It's whether anyone actually wants it to. Because the 2-week clock everyone's watching might not be counting down to renewed negotiations. It might be counting down to both sides simultaneously deciding that managed conflict serves their interests better than uncertain peace. That's not the analysis you'll hear from officials in either capital. But it's the pattern the evidence keeps pointing toward. And if that's accurate, if this becomes the new equilibrium rather than a temporary crisis, then everything about global energy markets, alliance structures, and regional power balances just fundamentally shifted. You're watching it happen in real time. The question is whether you're seeing it clearly.